Hello and welcome to Kettle and Bones, where we make really delicious, really healthy food. And you can too. We're going to be doing something today that I actually don't do a lot of, and that something is baking dessert. I don't know, I just never really developed much of a sweet tooth, so if I'm baking in the oven, it's usually a roast or casserole or some other savory entree. But sometimes a sweet snack or dessert is just the thing. So today we're going to employ some pro baking techniques to whip up a batch of sweet, low carb goodies that are next level tasty. Today we're making Victoria's Keto cookies. Let's get cooking. We're going to begin with our dry ingredients, and to ensure that they give us a light, non-clumpy finished product, we'll be sifting them through a fine mesh sieve. First, in goes about 3 parts almond flour. I probably have close to 12 ounces or so, about 340 grams, and 1 part lupin flour, about 4 ounces or roughly 113 grams. The lupin flour could be replaced with coconut flour if that's easier for you to get your hands on, or you could just do all almond flour, but I really like the fine texture that lupin flour brings into baked goods. We're also adding in just about a teaspoon or about 3 grams of xanthan gum, and just about the same amount of baking powder. Finally, a dash of salt, and let the sifting begin. If you are an experienced baker, your sifting technique may be much better than mine, but through strategic bumping, stirring, scraping, and jiggling like an old-timey prospector, we get this. A bowl of this perfectly uniform, light, fluffy, dry mixture. This has all the basic dry ingredients for our cookies. Now I'm going to be playing around with some different flavor combinations today, so I'm dividing this evenly between 3 bowls. If you just want to make one type of cookie, move ahead with the bowl that you have now. To my first bowl, I'm going to add a couple generous shakes of cinnamon. To the second, a hefty helping of unsweetened cocoa powder, and because it's unsweetened, I'm going to balance that with some powdered erythritol sweetener. I'll leave the third bowl as is for now. We're going to add some more stuff to it though after we prepare our wet ingredients. And prepare our wet ingredients is exactly what we'll be doing next. In a light colored pan, no cast iron, copper, or non-stick for this, we're adding a cup of butter. That's 227 grams or 2 standard size sticks of the rich, delicious golden stuff. Now over medium heat, we're not merely melting the butter, we're browning the butter. Browned butter has a deep, nutty flavor all its own, and it's a secret ingredient that many professional cookies, cupcakes, sweetbreads, and other sweet baked goods use to enhance their own flavor. You might recall that in Series 1, Episode 20, we made a browned butter sauce for our delicious, perfectly cooked spaghetti squash. Browning butter is not a technically difficult thing to do, but it does require a little patience, only 5 to 8 minutes, and your undivided attention. You can't walk away from this, even for a moment, because when butter browning happens, it kind of happens all at once. The rule is ABS, always be stirring. I'm constantly either swirling the butter gently in the pan or using a silicone spatula to stir and scrape along the bottom and sides. Browned butter looks brown because what we're actually doing here is toasting the milk solids in it, and we don't want any of those milk solids sitting there on the bottom of the pan and burning. After the butter completely melts, we get this foamy layer on top for about a minute or 2. Unsalted butter foams up a little. If you don't have unsalted butter today and you use salted butter, you will have a lot more foam. And that's okay, just keep stirring. The foam will soon start to dissipate, and you'll then have a mostly clear, bubbling liquid, and you'll be able to see the light-colored milk solids in there as well. At this point, the water in the butter has pretty much completely evaporated. Just keep stirring. We're almost there. In this final stretch, you might start to see the light yellow color begin to subtly darken, and that's when it's about to happen. There, all at once practically, our butter is browned. Start to finish, this took me almost exactly 7 minutes on medium heat, and it wasn't until the final minute that we saw much of a color change. Look, let's see it again. The butter melts, keep stirring. We get a few minutes of foam, keep stirring. The foam dissipates and the liquid becomes clear, keep stirring. And right at the end, keep stirring. Browning. So as I said, this isn't difficult, it just requires your undivided attention. Just keep stirring. As soon as we've achieved toasty brownness, this needs to come out of the hot pan and into a room temperature bowl immediately. It will burn if it stays sitting in that pan. Make sure you get every last bit of the toasty brown milk solids in there. That's where the flavor is. While this is still warm, we're going to dissolve our sweetener in it. I'm using a blend of granulated monk fruit and erythritol. This blend is a 1-to-1 substitute for sugar, and I recommend about 9 or 10 ounces, or about 200 to 250 grams, roughly a cup to a cup and a half, depending on how sweet you want your cookies. We're going to let this cool off for a few minutes because next we'll be adding 3 eggs, which I don't want to be scrambled eggs. So it's okay if this mixture is still slightly warm when they go in, but make sure it's not hot enough to cook the eggs. Last but not least, a splash of vanilla, or alternately, your flavor extract of choice. And each of our 3 bowls gets a portion of our wet ingredient mixture, so each of them now contains a thick, doughy batter that we can form into cookie shapes. Now I can at last reveal to you the final details of my plans for these cookies. I'm thinking let's go with classic chocolate chip for our first bowl, and double chocolate for our third bowl, the one with the cocoa powder. I'm stirring in sugar-free dark chocolate chips. If you can't find these locally, as always, there will be links in the description below the video where you can purchase the ingredients featured in this episode. That leaves our second bowl. So far, we've only flavored this one with cinnamon. Let's add some cashew butter. You could use peanut butter or almond butter too, but cashew butter was the fanciest nut butter that I had in the fridge today. It has a fairly light flavor and a creamy richness that's going to play very nicely with the cinnamon. Now, on a parchment-lined baking sheet, we just need to shape our cookies. I'm forming discs of cookie dough in roughly the size and shape that I want the finished cookies to be. These will expand and settle a little bit, but not that much. In terms of the size and shape, what you see is very close to what we'll get. I'm going to give our cinnamon cashew butter cookies one last sprinkle of cinnamon on top, just for fun. And finally, our double chocolate cookies. Really looking forward to trying these. Our extra dough can be stored for a few days in the fridge or several weeks in the freezer. How does fresh baked cookies whenever you feel like it sound? Pretty good! And our tray is going into a preheated 375 degree Fahrenheit oven, that's about 191 degrees Celsius, for 15 to 20 minutes, or until you have achieved your desired ratio of crunchiness to chewiness. The great thing about this dough recipe is it can make cookies with an amazingly moist, chewy, cakey interior, or they can be crisp and crunchy if you just let them go in the oven a little bit longer. It's all down to personal preference, and the exact cook time will depend on your oven, but in mine, just about 20 minutes exactly gives us a toasted brown exterior that is both crisp and a little chewy. Perfect. As soon as they are cool enough to handle, I'm going to transfer our cookies to a wire rack to finish cooling for another 10 to 15 minutes. When that time has passed, feel free to arrange your cookies artfully in an attractive and pleasing way. You know that old saying, the one that goes, sometimes life gives you the cookies you want, and sometimes it gives you the cookies you need. Well, sometimes it gives you both, and that's just what we have today. Oh, the classic chocolate chip. These actually remind me of Chips Ahoy cookies. Remember Chips Ahoy? Disgusting. These are way better though. The cinnamon cashew butter. This would be perfect with a cup of coffee. Yes, this is a breakfast cookie. And the double chocolate. If a fudge brownie took a semester off to travel, find itself, and pursue its lifelong dream of becoming a cookie, this is what you would get. Choco-tastic. And there you have it. Ultra low-carb cookies with ultra high-class cookie taste. I want to say a very special thank you to the pioneer of this recipe, my daughter Victoria, who for several months now has been tweaking and developing this formula, and I gotta say, I think she nailed it. Thanks for all your hard work, sweetie, and for the many batches of delicious prototypes that led us to today. Stay with Kettle and Bones for many more exceptionally tasty, low-carb versions of the meals, snacks, and treats that you've been missing. We're beginning a really special sub-series of recipes next week on the channel, so be sure to join me for that. If you thought keto-friendly cookies were exciting, what's coming will probably make your head explode. But for now, just enjoy Victoria's Keto Cookies.